textbooks haven't all come in yet. I'm sure the bookstore will be ready to.
There is one book I found. There is a book that actually goes a little more. I said anthropology.
Yeah.
That's a word that scares you, I know. I'm Daryl Frazetti, and I teach anthropology at Cal State University, Channel Island. And
You were formerly at?
well, I was up at Lake Tahoe Community College when I started teaching a lot of pop culture-oriented classes. And if you Google search me at all, you still come up seeing a lot of that stuff from Tahoe. And Western Nevada College, where I mostly taught biology over there, but budget cuts being what they are, and my background being what it really is, I guess I'm a biologist or biological anthropologist turned into a pop culture person, quite by accident, because some guy wanted me to teach a Star Trek class once. So that's really how we ended up in this situation this morning.
No, you ended up with it. Has anyone ever seen the documentary Trekkies?
Yeah.
You remember the guy with the cats in costumes? But that's how he got hired when he was an anthropologist to do. A guy said, "Oh, I remember you're from Trekkies. You can teach a class on Star Trek, right?" And he's like, "I'd rather do diseases and bones." Okay.
Yeah, there was a nice student that came by to talk to me because he was into forensic anthropology, and it was like reliving my old days, so it was nice yesterday. So if you're into biology, come and see me too. It makes me very happy. I've got a table at F15 in there, and this is Larry Nemecek. Larry and I have been doing conventions together for a while. We met when I was doing anthropology of Star Trek at Comicon down in San Diego. And Larry says his second favorite show after Star Trek, or his next favorite show after Star Trek, is Firefly. So I asked him to sit in on the panel with me. And then we'll do it again up in WonderCon in a few weeks up in San Francisco. Is it down? Oh, really?
You're pretty high when you're in Seattle.
I think I might be pretty high in general. Yeah, all right. Anyhow, Anthropology of Firefly. I put together this overview of topics, which I'm sure my nice colleague over here will review so that he knows what we're talking about today, because anthropology is a very scary word to him. Morals and ethics. Oh, that should be a lovely lesson for you. We'll talk about morals and ethics. You know what? Firefly is actually a really good show to discuss that anthropologically. There was a lot of stuff. What? Well, I think I'll try to kind of run through things, and if I put some questions out there, you guys, feel free to raise your hand and just kind of chime in if I put a question out. So I'll run it kind of like I do with my classrooms.
Is the microphone on and going?
And then once we wrap it up, we'll take some questions and you guys can formally stand at the line in the microphone. Thank you for asking, because I was really getting into this where we started a little off.
Yeah, that's really
well,
fun.
we had technical components running around the building. And the one thing I really don't do well in a classroom setting is manage my smart classroom. That's why they make nice students that know what to do with that. But oh yeah, I can't touch my own computer. Anyhow, back to Firefly. If people want to chime in while we're talking and we throw some questions out and ask you guys for opinion, you just go ahead and raise your hand or shout something out. Afterwards, we'll try to leave a little time and you guys can line up at the mic and ask some questions more formally. All right? Cool.
And I've been to some of your panels, Daryl, where it's not even so much one-to-one, it's even people in the audience get going back and forth.
Yeah, that's okay.
Are we open for that?
Yeah,
okay, just to throw that out there.
Anyhow, back to my overview. This is why you don't invite the extra people to class. Well, I had this best friend come to a class once, and I chased him around and tried to run a class that was interesting. Morals and ethics. I think Firefly, like I said, is a really good show where you could just pull on so many different themes if you wanted to. So I tried to keep this to a main focus of several that I thought were more central to the series in general. Morals and ethics is something that just permeates every ounce of it, I think. And then looking at Firefly as a cultural mirror, I don't think anybody in here would argue that there are a lot of ways that this is commentary on contemporary issues. I think that's pretty evident. And then, obviously, usually what I do when I pick out the theme of cultural teacher, I look at other ways that we can take lessons from a show or a movie and apply them in our own world. This I did a little bit differently because of the nature of Firefly, and I think that it's more focused on speaking to the issue of achieving social change. how social change can be achieved, or some of the things people try to do to achieve social change. Yeah? Okay, you can, if I say yeah, and okay. Anyhow, and then instead of just going with a discussion on fandom and talking about this cult that's kind of clustered around Firefly, I call it a cultural artifact. Does anyone know what cultural artifact is? Or why I would choose that term?
Because you're a professor.
Okay, and Larry Nemecek hired you today to be in the audience to say that. Anybody want to take a stab at cultural art? Thank you. That might be why. That could have been very well what happened in the middle of the night that
It's
night.
like an artifact. It's like kind of cultural.
Okay, now we're going to hear from the nice, intelligent people. Right there. Yeah, and it does come from being a professor too. I don't want to shut you down over there. When I teach my pop culture class, one of the things we talk about are the differences between icons, cultural icons, and cultural artifacts. And that's exactly what we're dealing with, is something that will be around.
Those in the back have no idea what he said.
Oh, okay.
Because there's no microphone on him.
Okay, the cultural artifact is basically something that is going to be around, and future generations can go back and find and review and get an understanding of why that was significant in the context in which we had it created. An artifact is just something that humans create, and it reflects our values, our beliefs, ideology, and so forth of that particular time period. And so when it resurfaces later, and you understand the context, then you understand the people of that particular time.
And how is that different from an icon?
Icons, if you look at like Elvis or Marilyn Monroe or Star Trek people call it cultural icon. But even at that, I would argue that Star Trek is more a cultural artifact than an icon. It's not just an image, it's not just a snapshot. And
You haven't defined icon yet.
oh, okay, all right. So
I
that's
said,
what I'm
what's an
going
icon?
to.
Yeah.
Well, what's an icon then?
I'm asking you, but is it a thing of Star Trek as an artifact, but Spock is an icon?
No, I wouldn't call Spock an icon. An
Define
icon.
icon.
If you think of Elvis, would you put Elvis in the same category as Firefly? Why not? You would. Maybe Elvis, maybe Marilyn Monroe, but there's like Michael Jackson. There's like Coca-Cola labels. Yeah.
So generally, my understanding of an icon would be something where you need the actual social aspects to understand the icon as an iconography.
Yeah, because once the context is gone, and you're not living in that time period, it doesn't hold the same meaning. But something like this that was created during that time period, we can go back and understand that period. But say 1,000 years from now, you look at Elvis or pull out a Marilyn Monroe picture, and the people of that time period may say, oh, that's all well and good, and we understand why you were so taken with Marilyn Monroe or Elvis, or Captain Kirk or Spock or whatever, but what does that really mean to us now? It's almost like saying, well, something that was cool in the 50s isn't cool to me today, but I understand why it had meaning then.
So are you saying that an icon is more present artifact?
It is, because we assign a certain value to it in the time period that we're associating with it. We're living that period and we're assigning that value to it.
Understood.
The artifact is something that's going to be pulled at a later date and time and give us the context and meaning from that time period with which to understand. It's like pulling up stone tools. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We're good?
Is that like a new bumper sticker for the next anthropological conference? Icons fade, artifacts are forever.
Go ahead, work on that. That's your new product. All right. Anyhow, morals and ethics I wanted to touch on, and I pulled what I thought was a really cool picture at the time. If someone tries to kill you, you try to kill them right back. Larry and I have been practicing that lately to see what we think of that expression. And with respect to the character, and I think that was just a great picture and a great quote to pull. It's those little motivational posters they have. and I found it. But anyhow, morals and ethics, relativism is a term I want to define because I think it's huge with respect to Firefly. Relativism comes in many forms, and I don't know how many people have anthropological backgrounds in the room, but cultural and ethical relativism. Basically, cultural relativism is you're looking at a practice or a belief, a worldview, and you're putting it in context with the culture or the people that happen to hold that view or hold that practice. And then you look at it and you say, well, it totally makes sense for them. So you don't pass judgment on what they're doing or what they're thinking, because it makes sense for that particular situation, for that particular culture. You may not agree with it, but that's irrelevant. Because what you would be doing otherwise is saying, well, I don't agree with that, I think that's ridiculous, but you're using your own cultural basis for making that determination.
But it also does not translate to a future time either. What is culturally relative at that time may not be culturally relative where you're coming from.
It may depend, though. Time is irrelevant, I think. I think it's defined really formally as being able to look at a practice or an ideology, anything about another culture through the lens of that culture. Time would be completely out of the picture. You may go to a situation and bring your time period, your generational experiences with you, but then you're turning it around and you're viewing it from that perspective.
I'm saying that what you see is well, in that time period it was culturally relative, cultural and ethical. If you took the same practices and you went to your time, that would then lost. Not cultural. For example, in the 1700s, marriage was between a man who was 30 and a woman who was 12. Because women died at 15 and 16, and they died in childbirth. And if you didn't do something like that,
Right.
nowadays,
Yeah. You want? Yeah. Why don't we just have everyone go to the mic and make it easier? I think that's okay. No, I just want to make sure people can hear things. If you're looking at something being culturally relevant, a marriage practice that we may have had in this culture that's now outdated, if we look at it 100 years ago, we still have to view it as what it meant in that context. And whether it's our culture and we've moved on in time, or it's another culture that's moved on in time, we still have to look at it with that unbiased eye from our own situation and put it within the frame of the context of whatever culture created that or is practicing it, whether it's past, present, or future. Okay? All right. As far as ethical relativism, now this is a whole other situation. Ethical relativism gets to be really complicated because who agrees on anything ethically, even within their own culture? Well, you try to sort out what's morality, what's ethics. And in an anthropological context, we can define these terms very differently than what you might expect. And it gets convoluted, it gets complicated, there's layers upon layers upon layers, which we won't go into. You can take courses on this. But basically, these are practices that are relevant to a culture. So we look at something like the classic example of female circumcision. That's always a good debate topic in an anthropology course, an intro course. Yeah, what do you think when I say that? You think these horrible things, huh? Yeah, but that not so the case. If you go into a culture that practices it, and this is where it gets to be a very complicated issue, you'll find that when you interview people, they say, well, it makes total sense, it keeps together the fiber of our culture, our social organization, and we would never change a thing. What really makes it complicated is in many instances when women leave those societies, and even males where societies practice male circumcision in such ways, they come out of that society and they're in another society and they become outspoken about it, and then it makes you wonder what's going on, and how should we be viewing this? But that's where you have to get into, well, why do they practice this form of birth control and that form of circumcision and so on and so on and so on? Well, each culture is going to make their own determination based on the nature of that culture, the social organization, the political views, the economic situation, and so on and so on and so on.